Hey guys, I'm going to make this really short. Still getting over a cold. So you may be aware that the Trump administration has been kind of going after the civil service. And the question is why. They have their own reason. I'll tell you the reason why they're doing it. And I'll tell you the ramifications of this, because I've actually seen this before, what happened when you go after a government's civil service foundation and the effects of it. I'm not the only one who's seen this. Actually, plenty of Americans have seen it. So basically, the civil service is from one administration to another. It's basically a constant which keeps the government running. And the thing is, you have members of the civil service, regardless of what party they're in, they're going to basically do their jobs idealistically, as the Constitution demands that they do it. Because when you work for the civil service, like you do a lot of government positions, your loyalty is to the Constitution and not to whoever is in charge. So if you're trying to do things like, for example, extend executive control to the legislative branch, like Trump's been trying to do, this is one example, trying to do recently by basically freezing spending, which is a power of the legislative branch, then the civil service that's loyal to the Constitution and not to you is going to gum up the works. That's just one example. So the civil service is broad. You can think of the FBI as being part of that civil service, and Trump is going after the FBI. He's trying to find individuals who were appointed to investigating him. He wants the list of those people, and he's going to take punitive action against them because they were basically doing their jobs. If you're in the FBI, you're assigned to a job. You were assigned to investigate Trump. You were doing your job. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say much of the FBI is probably right-leaning. But once again, their loyalty is to the Constitution, not to one single administration. So basically, if you're trying to be a quasi-dictator, the civil service makes that a little harder for you. So where have I seen this thing happen before? Well, the coalition, I think it was the Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq. So in 2003, the United States, when they took over, basically invaded Iraq, took over the Iraqi government, they started what they called the de-Baathification process. And the Ba'ath Party, for you guys who don't remember, they were basically the party that Saddam Hussein was, I don't know if you say he was a member of, or he was clearly the leader of, but there was also a connection of the Ba'ath Party with the Sunni Arabs, Sunni being a sect of Islam, but also kind of think of it as a religious ethnic identity. So one of the effects of doing this, one, the Sunni minority felt that they were being, that the Iraqi government was being punitive because it was basically excising the Sunni, even though the Sunni were the minority of the Iraqi population, they were the ones in charge at the time. They felt that there was punitive action being taken against them, but also that of that civil service, there was about 100,000 members of that civil service. This doesn't only include soldiers and police, but it was also just doctors, lawyers, people, just accountants, people who know how the government would be ran. So by removing those roughly 100,000 members of the Ba'ath Party, they basically, in addition to basically bring up a lot of resentment with the Sunni minority, they're also gutting the government of the people who knew how the government should work. So when you remove the people who actually know how things are done, at best you're left with a bunch of people who do not have you're removing a lot of experience. So best case scenario is that as people slowly leave the government, they spend time with new members of the government, teach them how to do things, show them how things are done, people learn. And so the old guard basically leaves, the new guard takes over. But when you just gut it because of some type of political reason, then that's what you're left with. So this pressure being put on the civil service, one, it's to allow Trump to to basically extend the power of the executive branch to that, beyond that of the executive branch, into the legislative and, yes, the judicial branch. But also the process of that is that it's going to make the government less efficient. Maybe not even less efficient, less functional. So what happens is you make the government less functional, then you can say, look how terrible the government is. We need to make it smaller and smaller. The one thing I'll say about that, because that isn't the point of me making this video, is to say all those people who are saying, rah, rah, well, shouldn't that be great, a smaller government? Well, I'd always say that you don't look at it as if you're saying you want a smaller government or a bigger government, saying as if you want a more effective government. And I think certain elements of this, it applies across the board. So military, do you want a smaller military or a bigger military? Well, it simply depends on the mission of the military. It depends on the mission of the force. So I'll give a concrete example and then I'll end this because I don't remember the exact numbers. You can look this up yourself. But there's been studies done that, I know studies, very vague, but maybe later on I'll find a link to an article and put it in the notes of this video. Right now I'm just going to upload this on my phone. But there's been studies done that basically if you were to do extra spending on the IRS, the amount of revenue that the IRS would bring in would more than compensate the amount of money that's lost. Now you may sit there and think, well, I don't want the government taking more of my money. Why would I fund more of that? Well, here's the thing. If you are a middle-class American or, maybe like, let's say if you're the 75 income or below, this isn't affecting you. They're getting your money. What they're doing, that additional the additional manning in the IRS would get people who are much better at hiding their money than you probably are. But also people who aren't paying their fair share. So instead of saying smaller government, less money, say to yourself, more efficient government, more effective government. And if that means smaller government, then it's smaller government. End it with the metaphor. The engine in your car or the car you have, depending on what you want that vehicle to do, you want a small one or a big one. I drive a 4-door sedan. It has like a 2 something V4 engine, small engine. But if I were trying to haul logs around, I would want a bigger vehicle. It's just hauling me, small engine, hauling bigger things, bigger engine. So think of effective, efficient can do the job. If you just say, I just want small and no interference. Well, here's what you end up losing. You end up losing your VA benefits. You end up losing your Social Security payments. You end up losing your government grants. You end up losing your research for things that you aren't aware of that will eventually affect you. You end up losing the payment of interstates being fixed, of bridges being fixed, and those things that work in the background that you aren't even aware of. Because when things work effective, you don't notice them. But when things don't work effective, you definitely notice them. And if you allow these people to gut the government, then you will definitely notice it. And quite frankly, they don't care because they have the money. All they're trying to do is funnel the money into their pockets.